The insane thing is I only do these wrap-ups every 3 months, and yet here we are again. Hello there and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys all the books I read from January 2021 to March 2021. If you've watched my previous video, you know that I went back to college in January, so I've been just busy doing that. Today I'm featuring an empty shelf because I just did a lot of rereads this quarter. I was kind of stressed about the idea of going back to school and I was like, oh, I don't want to take on like new information with school and then new information with like leisure reading. The other reason why I wanted to do a lot of rereads for this quarter is because, I don't know, a little birdie may have told you, it's me, I'm your little birdie. That sounds so wrong. Netflix's Shadow and Bone is finally coming out this month, so in preparation for the TV show, I wanted to reread all the books in the Grishaverse series. It involved reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy, 1, 2, and 3. So we'll return that to the shelf over here. I also read the Crooked Kingdom, the Six of Crows duology. Put that over here. I'm missing a series. Yes, I am. Oh goodness, don't fall. King of Scars duology book 1. Reread that, but it also involved me reading for the first time, not a reread, The Lives of Saints, and yes, this is the Illumicrate special edition with a special cover. If you've never heard of the Grishaverse books before today, I apologize. I'm just like talking at you with all these books and you're like, I don't even know what this is about. It's a fantasy series set in a world where there are these people called the Grisha. They can control the wind, the water, fire, the blood in a person's veins. They can be healers, they can summon lightness, and they can summon darkness. So The Lives of Saints is a spin-off novel. Schwinning. It's one of those books that exist in the universe of the other books. This played a huge role in the first trilogy, and then the author Leigh Bardugo finally published like a real life counterpart to The Lives of Saints that you could find in the book. It's really cool. It's such a short read, and then it's kind of just like an anthology of saints. For those Catholics out there, you'll remember we kind of had something like this growing up, like your collection of Catholic saints, and then each saint has a full page illustration. I'm just realizing that the covers are huge, but spoilers for the Shadow and Bone trilogy. But oops. Oh well. Okay, moving on from the Grisha books. These weren't the first books I read this year, I'm now recalling. The first 3 books I read this year were all arcs from Penguin Random House, and I did a 3-in-1 book review on my channel a couple of videos back, so I'm just gonna leave a link to it above. So I read The Gilded Wolves by Namina Forna, and it's a high fantasy inspired by the author's upbringing in Sierra Leone in Africa, and it's this feminist, wild, awesome fantasy novel. I can't wait for the sequel. I really enjoyed it. The second book I read was Don't Tell a Soul by Kirsten Miller. That one was a ghost story set in upstate New York that was kind of inspired by Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I'm uncultured. And the last book I read before diving into my Great Grisha Rereadathon was Rebel Daughter by Laurie Vanhoff Kaufman. That is a historical fiction novel set around the time of the Jewish-Roman War. We're thinking 1,000 years back, like just a couple of years after Jesus died, that far back. Again, leaving the book review up top. That's a 3-in-1 book review, so you don't gotta go clickety-clue. It's all there. Moving on to post-Grisha, after 6.5 books set in Fantasyland, I was like, okay, I love fantasy as much as the next gal, in fact probably even more, but I need a break. So I decided to jump into my next favorite genre aside from fantasy and historical fiction, crime thrillers and murder mysteries and all things culty. I decided to read Those Who Pray by Jennifer Moffett. So this is a story about a college girl who was feeling like not really fitting into the whole college life, and she finds her solace in a church group on campus, and then they eventually like take up a lot of her time and money, and then there's like a summer study abroad program in Italy hosted by this church. She gets selected to be an intern when she goes there, so you're thinking like, whoa, crazy brainwashy cult, cool. Which is not at all. I was reading this right around the time like we were getting into a lot of scene work in college on my online classes, and they were talking about like when you do a scene, when you make a choice, you have to make bold acting choices. It's okay if it's wrong, but it's gotta be bold. That was what I felt the whole time reading this book. I was like, where are your bold choices? Where are the high stakes? Especially this is a book about a cult and sort of our threshold of creepiness and ick factor when it comes to true crime has definitely risen from like 10 years ago. Had this book been published probably in the early 2000s, I would have said, okay, this is an adequate cult book. But now we're looking not necessarily violent or gory, but we're looking for big moments. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that cult did that. The choices in this book were so safe. By the time I reached the ending, I was like, oh, she was brainwashed? She has that much unresolved trauma to go through? Like, and I don't want this to come off like I'm minimizing the protagonist's trauma, but I feel like if you're gonna write a cult book, write a dang cult book. Have fun with it, go crazy, don't play it safe. This book just really played it safe, and I was so unfortunately disappointed by this one. Thankfully, the next book just like salvaged everything from that previous book. So I decided, ugh, crime thrillers not working out for me so far, but I also don't want to head back into fantasy yet. What is my next comfort zone? Yes, you guessed it, historical royal fiction. I read The Queen's Fortune by Alison Pataki. I adore Alison Pataki as an author, so I was very meticulous because I was so disappointed with the previous book. I was like, okay, I gotta choose this next one carefully. It's gotta be an author I know I can rely on to give me the goods. And Alison Pataki had a duology about Empress Sisi. Side note, Netflix is also making a TV show about her, and I'm so excited for it. So it's called The Queen's Fortune, and the subtitle is Desiree, Napoleon, and the Dynasty. I, in my life, have never heard of a Desiree involving Napoleon before coming across this book. Supposedly, Desiree was Napoleon's like first love. Now I know who Desiree is, and I know the bigger legacy she left to the world, and when I found out about it, I was so proud because I connected the dots. The book started off when Desiree was old, and it was in Sweden, and I was like, why would this start off the book in Sweden? Napoleon, Sweden, what are we doing here? And then about, I'd say, a third of the way through, just with the names given and knowing that how the book started and kind of little things that were referenced, I was like, oh, is this the book about the redacted, because I don't want to spoil it for you. But like, how many royal fans am I actually spoiling this for? I can just tell you. Desiree goes on to be Queen of Sweden, and her husband found the dynasty, the Swedish royal family that is still in place today, aka next to the British royal family, my favorite royal family. I love Crown Princess Victoria and Princess Madeline and Prince Carl Philip and all their love stories. I adore them so much, but I'd never sort of gone into their history. I didn't even expect to go into their history when coming across this book. I thought I was just reading a book about Napoleon, and then it had like a little Easter egg for me in that it involved the creation of the current Swedish royal family, the House of Bernadotte. I could go on forever about this book. I really enjoyed it. Alison Pataki's writing, as usual, like takes you away. I've never been to so many places that she's written about in her books, but because of her books, I am there in a second. Like the way she paints, I always use this metaphor and I need to look for more metaphors, but the way she paints the picture of 19th century Sweden or France, I'm completely 100% there and living it. She also has heart in her books, because you know, you can have magnificent wondrous prose and it's cold, but she has warmth in her words. There's one interaction towards the end between Desiree and Napoleon that just like, even though you weren't rooting for them or whatever, like your heart still like clenches and you feel all the feelings. Everyone knows that Napoleon and Josephine, they were like the power couple. What is this? Desiree and Josephine also had a friendship of sorts. At the end of the book, the author reveals the two princesses of Sweden today have Josephine and Desiree as their middle names, and that just gave me goosebumps all over. I loved all the connections. We all know it's gonna make my favorites at the end of this year. Par for the course, my first favorite usually comes in the form of a historical royal fiction. Who could have predicted this? Everybody. That's who. The last two books, don't worry, this won't take up so much of your time because I know I talked a lot about The Queen's Fortune. This was back in the period where school was starting to pile on, and I was like, I have a deadline to chase here and there and outside of school. So what do? You reread more books just to be chill. I know you'll ask, why didn't you just stop reading books for fun and take a break? Not in my DNA. Mountain of TBR. Like, I gotta keep my reflexes fresh. It's kind of like asking athletes, like, why not just stop working out? No, they do a lesser, calmer workout that doesn't take up so much of their time and energy if they're busy, but they still work out. The last two books that I reread are, duh, of course, Tomorrow Pierce books. Now, a couple of wrap-ups ago, I reread the first 2 books in this quartet, and now I'm reading the last 2 books in this quartet. Third book is called The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, and the 4th book is called Lioness Rampant. Alana's Quartet was the first series in the Tortal series, so these books were published, I think, 1980s? Yeah, holy moly, 40 years ago. And it's a series about a girl who wants to be a knight, but because her patriarchal kingdom doesn't allow lady knights, she goes undercover as a boy. And these 2 books in particular are especially fun because they're already her as a knight. I think you can guess from the titles whether or not she's still undercover as a boy, but it's really fun because we actually get to go on knightly adventures and quests and all that fun stuff. Again, I'm still surprised every time I read these books how well they hold up 40 years on. There are a couple of like politically incorrect things that you're like, ooh, product of the 80s for sure, but not as many as you would expect. So they hold up really well. I still love the idea and the themes of feminism, and Alana's just such an amazing heroine, and I appreciate her more every time I reread the book, and I'm really excited to see more of her adventures because she does feature as like a cameo character in the next series. I say excited like I've never read the books before. So that's about all the books I read for fun this quarter. This doesn't take into account like books I had to read for school because I didn't think anybody would care, but I did read a lot of plays, which I was really happy about. Theater major, so obviously like probably 10 plays so far and counting, so I'm loving getting that exposure to like the world of theater. But that about does it for my first reading wrap up for 2021. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter and Instagram. I'm both at cuckooforbooks. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys.